Hi there, how you guys doing? This video, I'm going to explain to you how I passed my driving test eventually on the third attempt. Now, before I get to the main point of how I passed my driving test, I do want to tell you about my journey and how I started the whole driving, the pursuit of trying to pass my driving test. I first started taking driving lessons when I was around 20 years old in 2000, and I remember joining Holborn Driving School, as a young 20-year-old lad, and it was my first ever a series of driving lessons that I had booked and paid for in advance. Back then, the lessons were 1 hour each, as compared to now, where the standard is 2 hours. I had booked that. I was also at college at the same time, and I had initially booked a a batch of 10 hour, which what you call is block lessons. I only did about 8 lessons then, and the two which were remaining, I didn't do them because I dropped out. I stopped doing the lessons. In that year, I also passed my theory test for the first time, um, and so everything was going well, But sadly, I dropped out, and the remaining 2 lessons I didn't do, which I kind of regret now because if I paid for something, you want to use it. I then resumed my driving lessons in 2008 with the AA, and I had a lovely instructor called Richard who taught me in the Ford Fiesta. I also that year passed my theory test again. My instructor told me, "Have you passed your theory test?" I said I hadn't, and so I also was busy doing my theory test. Sadly, after about 10 lessons, I stopped. The lessons were very expensive, back then, and especially when you're with the AA, with a company, a franchise, the lessons would be very expensive. So in total, by then I had done 2 theory tests and had resumed my driving lessons, but I had never ever booked the test. Okay, 2000 I never booked a test. 2008 I never booked a test. Okay, then what happened was I resumed my driving lessons again, just for 2 lessons in 2010 with a cousin of mine, and I only took 2 lessons. And again, I stopped taking lessons after that. I also that year I came very close, and that was 2010, to actually booking my driving test. But what happened was this: something inside me stopped me from booking it because I wasn't test ready. Okay, just doing 2 lessons previously and then thinking you're gonna pass the test is actually very foolish. Okay, my theory, the reason why I tried to book the driving test was because my theory paper was running out. I had done the theory test in 2008, which I've already said, and by 2010 it was slowly approaching its expiry date. And this is what panic sets in. Most people, you know they begin to get very panicky that the theory test paper is running out. So I didn't book it, even though I was planning to book it, and I just let it go. And it was the best decision I made because when you're not ready, when you're not test ready, you will fail. You know. Then after that, that was 2010. After that, in 2020, just before we went into a lockdown, the first lockdown, which was around March 2020, I had thoughts of getting back to driving, the theory test. I believe that year during the lockdown, I started my first theory test revision. You know, I passed it twice before already, and so I knew I could pass. But this time, what I wanted to do was get a really high score, such as like 49 out of 50, 50 out of 50. And eventually I did pass, and eventually I passed my theory test and I got 48 out of 50, which is a very high score. I didn't continue, or I didn't kickstart my driving lessons because, first of all, we went to lockdown, and second of all, when I started reading on the DVSA websites about how driving tests were going to be conducted during the lockdown, such as wearing a mask, your instructor has to wear a mask, um, the fact that the car has to be cleaned, and the fact that if you had one serious fault, your car will be taken back to the test center. And I thought that was not a good idea because a driving test is 40 minutes long and you're paying for something which can be over in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, okay? And I thought that was a very bad idea. The other thing is this: I wear glasses, and masks are not a great thing with glasses. They fog up because of the steam releasing up. Although there is a solution to that. Um, so that was one of the reasons why I didn't resume my driving lessons or the thought of booking a test, because this is what's going to happen. So eventually, when everything was completely lifted off, I started my driving lessons in October 2021. I got in touch with someone who was a driving instructor, and I kickstarted my lessons with the person. He was a very experienced driving instructor. Then after about 3-4 lessons, when I knew I had secured an instructor, what I did was I learned from the past that if I do the theory test and don't continue with the driving lessons and book a test, that paper will run out like previously. I hadn't booked a test, I had no goals. So this time I said to myself, once I've secured an instructor, once I'm happy with the instructor, I will book the test. So I believe around November maybe, or even October 2021, I booked the test, the theory test, and that was scheduled for 22nd of December 2021. As I kept taking lessons, my theory test was approaching, and that was good enough. I may have taken about 7 or 8 lessons, and then I was ready for the theory test. And again, I had done 2 revisions, and I was ready. I was ready to do that theory test, to pass it, and then stick with my instructor. So I passed that. I got 48 out of 50, and then what happened was I booked my driving test for Barnet on April 29th, 2022, and this particular test area was not my instructor's choice. He was more interested in taking me to Mill Hill, Hendon, and most people who are like me, who live in North London, they will be taken to Hendon, Mill Hill, and I had no choice but to book Barnet because, the backlog was just so huge because so many people's tests were cancelled and so many people were trying to book. I had no choice but to book Barnet. And I told my instructor that. And what happened was, the plan was in my head was that I'm going to take lessons in Barnet as well as in his area, which is Mill Hill, Hendon area. So I took lessons in Mill Hill, Hendon area. Then I geared many of my lessons towards Barnet, where eventually I'm going to take my test. And this is the right advice. If you're going to, wherever you're going to take your test, you have to take lessons in that area, and the maximum number of lessons. You need to know the familiarity. You need to know the peculiarities of that test area. Okay, so that it makes it easy to pass. If you are taken to another test area or something, you have an area where you have driven, what will happen is you'll experience a certain amount of difficulty, unfamiliarity. So I did about 6, 7, 8 hours of lessons in Barnet, which is not good enough. And then what happened was on April 29th, just 3 days before my test, I became ill. And by then, with the DVSA, is that you have to give 5 days notice if you want to cancel it. And by then it was too late. And on the test day, I wasn't fully recovered. I had recovered, but I wasn't fully recovered. And my reaction levels was bad. I may have gotten the flu or something. I don't know what it was. And I had taken 2 previous driving lessons with my instructor, and what I noticed was, whenever you're ill, your reaction levels are very slow, and if you're at a junction, you may go when it's time to go at a roundabout or at a traffic light when it's green. Your reaction levels are just not good enough. So that was very unfortunate. But the thing is, I went ahead with the test because I had paid for it, and there was no way I was gonna get a refund. So I did the test. I just had a quick half an hour drive around the area before the test, and sadly I got 4 serious faults with my instructor. And one of the reasons I know was because I was ill, and number 2 was I probably hadn't taken enough lessons there. 4 serious is pretty bad, and that just 1 serious is enough to fail. I took the feedback from the test. One of my serious was that I had gone past a traffic light. It became red as I was approaching it, and I should have slowed down. And another of my serious was that I went down a road which was 20 miles an hour, and I was doing 30. I didn't know that it was a 20-mile-an-hour road, and my examiner, I remember him telling me that slow down, slow down. And that was one of the serious faults. Another one was junctions observations, where you come to a T junction and you're not looking right, left, right. The 3 minimum checks needed. And I took the feedback, and I just moved on. After that, what happened was I changed my instructor. The guy initially who I had planned to take with, who's a good friend of mine, he had told me that he didn't have a car. So this is why I went to the next instructor, who I went Barnet with. So I contacted him, and I told him, can we start driving lessons? I told him, I've got a valid theory test. So I booked the lessons with my instructor, Ken Watson, his name, of Motivate Driving School. And I think around June, I think I started taking lessons with him. And it was great. We were driving with a new Ford Fiesta. It was a good feeling being with someone who was very well experienced, and someone who I had known for some years. He was a good friend of mine. So I started taking lessons, and I believe I then had, by June or July, or one of the dates, even before I had done a series of lessons with him, I had booked my second driving test in Hendon, which was dated for October 18th, 2022. Okay. So what you would have noticed, or what many people would have noticed, is that the tests, officially, legally, were very far away. By the point you had failed one, it would have just been another 5-month wait. And if I had failed the October 18th one, again, it would have been another 4 or 5 month wait. So nevertheless, I booked it. I booked it at a test center which my instructor takes his pupils to, his favorite test center. And I went there. I was watching more YouTube videos. I was watching endless amount of YouTube videos on driving, and this time particularly on the Hendon test routes. Okay, I would watch a lot of videos by Gozondo Driving, Mark. I would watch videos by 2 Day Pass. Most videos that were primarily filming in Hendon test routes. And I got a lot of knowledge about the Hendon test area. You know, the procedure when you leave a test center, um, when you come back to the test center, you know. I went on websites on to learn about driving, you know, little websites where, you know, you you learn things about driving junctions, speed signs, etc. I had by then created a massive playlist on driving Hendon videos on my YouTube, and I would refer to them once in a while, you know, to re-jog my memory. As well as that, I had also studied the Ford Fiesta washer controls videos. There's a few videos that you can get, but I suggest that you specifically get a video for your car because every car is different. So much videos on that. I knew exactly where everything was. The windshield wiper, the rear windshield wiper, the dipped headlights, the climate controls, the horn, the mirrors, you know, many of the things that you'll be asked to do when it's the show me tell me. Okay. I had also incorporated practice with my instructor, telling him that please can you give me at least two show me whilst I'm driving, because if an examiner gives you a show me whilst you're driving and your head is just focusing on driving, suddenly hits you with a question, when it's safe to do so, can you wash and wipe your rear windscreen? You don't want to have any hesitancy, but at the same time you want to wait until it's safe. So I practiced this with, I once even wrote down all the possible ones, gave it to my instructor who did it and helped me. I remember previously in my Barnet test, when I failed it, when my examiner told me, when it's safe to do so, can you set the rear demister on? I can't remember, but it must have been one of them. But I remember getting it wrong because his wording, I understood it differently. So when someone says your rear demister, there's a difference between that and the rear windscreen wash. Okay, so you need to hear what he's telling you before you do it, but at the same time you need to know which one is which. So you've got that button, and then you've got your rear wash stalk there on the right hand side. So I took all that and made sure that with this car that I'm driving, the Ford Fiesta, there would be no hesitancy when I eventually took this car to the test. So I did all of this. I used to watch videos again, just between lessons to keep my memory fresh of the car, because many of these features you won't be using them when you're driving. Most people, when they're driving, and at most they'll probably use the right door mirror to get some air into the car. And if it's raining, you'll probably use the front windshield wiper. So in order to keep these things fresh, I practiced them with my instructor, and by the time Hendon came, again we practiced all this. Sadly, what happened was I failed in Hendon. I got two serious faults. One was for mirrors change of speed, and another one was for control gears. What had happened was this: the examiner took me down a left turn, straight ahead left turn, and suddenly it became a hill. And I had done that turning in third gear, okay, which is the wrong gear. The right gear should have been a second. Any turnings you do once your car is in motion, you should do it in second. If you're in if you're in traffic light and you're about to do a left turn, you should do it in first gear because your car is already still. So I learned from that. I got the feedback from that. I spoke to my instructor. then in one of the next lessons, he took me down a hill, and I stayed in second gear. Whenever you go up a hill, you must stay in second gear. So I worked on my gears and in everything other things, I worked on that. So after failing that, I then went onto the DVSA website and booked my third test again at Hendon. And this time it was for 23rd March 2023. Again, so this is another 5-month wait. November, December, January, February, March. Another 5-month wait. So the patience game had to kick in, had to be patient. And the blessing in disguise that happened from this time around, and what I've learned actually from everything, was that because of the big gaps between my lessons, between my tests, I was practicing a lot. My lessons would be at the minimum still be one every 3 weeks. Initially, you would do one a week, and then eventually just wears off that enthusiasm, and you may go down to one every 3 weeks, one every 4 weeks, And what happened was, without knowing it, I was taking more lessons and I was practicing more hours. By the time I had done my test, which I passed in, I had clocked 70 hours of driving this time around. Okay, 70 hours of driving with 2 instructors, as well as my previous experience with previous lessons in 2008, in 2000, and some little driving lessons that I did here and there. In total, by the time I had done my test in Hendon on the 23rd, I would have clocked, in my opinion, at least 100 hours of driving lessons in an instructor's car. So I had gained experience. I was a better driver. I had learned more. And this is the reason why I believe I eventually passed in Hendon with only 8 minors. I got lucky in Hendon because it was the same examiner who had failed me previously. Okay, his name was Chris. But when he explained to me why I failed, he said it in such a nice way that I really took it nicely from him. I never took it too hard that I had failed. He was a lovely instructor. He explained it to me, And this time around, I got lucky because I was happy for him to be my examiner this time around. And, we went for a drive. Luckily, the route wasn't that difficult. I didn't go on any dual carriageways in Hendon or in that Hendon vicinity, nor did I go on Apex Roundabout, which is a very complex roundabout in Hendon, which a lot of people fail in. My test was at 8:20 a.m., which was a time when there will be lots of kids on the street, families taking their kids to school. And I remember in a part of the test on the 23rd March, there was kids just hovering in the streets, and I had to be very careful, especially with the highway code changes and hazard perceptions that we already know, that you have to be very careful. You have to slow down, you give them the way. And so I was just trying to do my best as the situation was unfolding in front of me. We headed back to the test center. He made me switch the engine off, and he said, "Congratulations, you have passed." And it was great. It was a great feeling. It was a great feeling that I had passed. I went there on that day feeling confident that it would be a good drive. I said to myself, there's going to be 2 situations. Either I'm going to pass or fail. So I knew those 2 situations there, and you have to cope with it. I'm aware of people who took 8 tests before they passed. 6 tests, 8 tests, some even more. But the difference between me and them and this time around is this. Before the lockdown, people can easily book a test easily. They'll fail one, and within 10 days, they can book another one. Then they'll fail that, and within a month, they've got the next one. And so their 8 tests could have been within the space of a year. And my 3 tests were within the space of a year. with 5 month gaps in between, but in total 70 hours of lessons, okay? The recommendation they say is you need at least 45 hours of lesson plus private practice. I had no private practice. All my lessons were with an instructor. So this is the difference between the time we're living now with a huge backlog that has built up, that is causing people to wait 5-6 months for a test, and they're going down a dodgy route, paying extortionate fees to book a test. Initially, I had thought of going to another test center called Goodmays, which is apparently an easy test center because there's no dual carriageways or complex roundabouts. But I said to myself, you know what, if there's others, they can pass over there. Why can't I? If others are passing, why can't I pass? And I'm not a big fan of these pass rates, this test center 47 pass rate, this test center 43%. It doesn't really mean much to me because if you've had good training and you've got good knowledge, you can pass this test. I passed the test, and this is my proof. I'm going to just hide my number there, and this isn't a thing, by the way, in a folder of mine. This is my pass certificate, which I got. So I passed, and I told my instructor I passed, and then we headed back home. A few things before that had made me become very determined to pass. I'm going to show you one thing that I had. I bought these P plates, okay? I bought these P plates from a shop near my home, probably about 8 years ago. I can't remember. I bought them impulsively, thinking, one day I'm going to pass and then put these P plates on. And this was such a long time ago. So I would, sometimes when I would go into the in the storeroom, what I'll do is I'll look at these and think, you know what, these are meant to be for a reason. I'm going to have to put these on a new car that I buy when I pass. Okay, so they've been lingering in my home for a while. I've still got them now, and I'm still going to use them for a while. And I then eventually bought a car after I passed. So here's my keys to the Ford. Okay. And I was lucky because I was working, I saved up money, and I went ahead and bought a car. I bought on the 1st of April. I passed my driving test on the 23rd of March. And then what I did was I just waited for my driving license to come through. It takes about a week. And once that came through, I contacted my brother and said to him, can we go somewhere like Cargiant or something to buy a car? And so I went, bought the car, and I put the P plates on. And the dream had come true, And here I was, a new driver, inexperienced, new driver but inexperienced, okay? So far since I bought the car, I've been around London, I've been Enfield, I've been Upton Park, I've been on dual carriageways in the night time, I've been inside tunnels. And after you pass your driving test, you can either do the Pass Plus scheme, which is great, or you can have your instructor and go places with him, or get someone to accompany you if you're uncomfortable. But eventually you need to drive on your own. Okay, no one can be there because you're not going to become an independent driver like everyone. Eventually, you need to go on the motorway, and eventually one day, you have to go on the motorway on your own. No one's going to be there, but you must build up your experience gradually. Okay, so before you go into a 70-mile-an-hour motorway, go into a 40-mile-an-hour dual carriageway, 50-mile-an-hour dual carriageways. Do the roundabouts there. Drive around London. Do some nighttime driving locally before you venture out a bit more further. Let your confidence build up. So that's my journey, and the only advice I can give to people is this: find an instructor that you like, that you get along with. if you're not sure, just pay for one lesson, 1 or 2 lessons. See if you like the instructor. See if you get along with him. Because if the chemistry is excellent, you're gonna go places. You're gonna be always eager to take lessons with your instructor. If you're not happy, change your instructor. Okay. Um, Look at the reliability of your instructor. Is he turning up on time? Is his phone switched off? The phone has to be switched off by an instructor and kept in the dashboard. Your phone should also be switched off. How much is the test day price? Many instructors, they're charging a huge amount of money on the test day, and it's wrong. My instructor charged me, a very small amount of money compared to what others were charging. Um, is the car good on the test day? Has the car been checked? You could fail your test if the tread depth is not good, and you need to check this. An examiner comes out of the test center and he looks at the car, and he's actually making observation to see if the car is roadworthy. And if your tire depth is not good, the test won't go ahead. Staying consistent with your driving lessons. You have to take weekly, fortnightly lessons. Okay, consistency is the main thing. Okay, I stayed consistent with my lessons this time around. I had no big 3-month gaps between lessons or change of instructor. Always turn up on time. Make sure your phone is on silent before you get into the car. Put your glasses on if you need them before you leave the house, not while you, because this is time. Time is going. Make sure you're in comfortable shoes, light shoes in the summer, light clothing. Nothing too tight, restriction jeans. Um, um, and make sure you've had a good sleep before your lesson. Don't take lessons when you're ill. If you're ill and you haven't recovered, don't take the lesson. Cancel it, because your reactions won't be good. In every lesson, you need to be good. Okay, you can't be ill. Watch videos on YouTube. Watch endless amount of videos on YouTube. Make sure you take your lessons in that test area where you're going to go to take your test. Okay, and if you fail, stay with the same test center if you can, and keep taking lessons over there. Drive around as much as possible in that area, because on a test route, on the test day, they could take you anywhere, and you may not know where they're going to take you. Okay. Watch endless videos on YouTube. Create playlists. Watch videos specifically for that test center. Okay, you do a YouTube throw up, and you'll find something there that has videos for that particular test center. Okay. You don't want to look at different test centers, because you're just going to overload yourself with information which is relevant. Okay. Watch videos narrated by the instructor of that test center. Watch videos where obviously the sound will be muted if it's a real test, but try to watch these videos and see what the instructor is telling you. If you're looking for tests on DVSA website, I suggest just keep browsing it. Like me, I found at least 2 of them were cancellations, and keep looking for them and keep refreshing that page until you find something. Okay, because if you keep looking, you will find something. Be aware that your test can be cancelled on the day due to bad weather, etc. Examiners not turning up, so your test will be rescheduled. Be aware that it's going to be a very long wait. So if you can play the patience game, you could start your lessons next year, because it's just not. It's going to be a long wait, legitly, to book the next test after you failed this test. Okay. Make sure you have enough money, because this time around, with 70 hours of lesson, I had spent about 1,800. This is 2023, 2022 prices. Okay. In total, I must have spent about £2,500, possibly 3,000 with my previous lessons, free theory tests, free practical tests, and this is all money. Um, some advice with the theory test I can tell you is try to go through the book, the app as much as possible. Do as many mock tests on the app or even on websites until you can achieve 47 hour 50 or 48 hour 50. Okay, make sure you go through another revision of the book on the day. You want to get onto that computer screen and answer question without hesitancy. The moment you have hesitancy is the moment is you're going to take a little guess and a gamble that this is the right answer, and you don't want that. You want to know exactly that this is the answer. Okay, and this takes a lot of hard work. I when I did my theory test, I was up every night almost in my bedroom with the lamp on and going through the book, giving myself half an hour. I had done GCSEs, and so I had that revision skill. A lot of it is memory based, trying to keep that memory fresh. Okay, turning up at the theory test center on time. Again, the same thing with the apps. Just keeping the app and just going through it, and making sure you do those mock tests, making sure you do your hazard perception tests. On YouTube, there's a great video on the free click method on hazard perception. Watch that video, the free click method for hazard perceptions, and this will teach you how to pass the hazard perception part of the test. Take your time with the theory test. Don't rush. They're giving you 50 to 60 minutes there. You can take your time. You can flag some of the questions. Okay. So that's it. This is my journey. I passed in manual. I was adamant in that I'm going to pass in manual, even though a few people told me to do it in automatic. So I didn't really listen to them. And plus, my instructor already had both my instructors had manual cars, so it was a match made in heaven. And as I said, this time around, my instructor who was taking lessons with, he had 20 years of experience behind the wheel, as a instructor and a driver. In fact, he was so good, he was able to tell that someone was about to turn into a zebra crossing to cross where I need to stop, purely on body language of the person. And I would have not known that because I would have waited until the person is actually waiting there at the test at the zebra crossing. He was a very well experienced instructor. He's a good friend of mine. So this is my journey, and I hope you get something out of this video, and hopefully you pass and share the news. My advice to anyone is don't tell anyone you've got a driving test, because that will put more pressure on you. Go into a driving test with knowing that there can only be two outcomes. Either you're going to pass or you're going to fail. Okay? Don't be too adamant that you need to pass. That's more pressure adding onto yourself. Okay? But stay positive, because if you stay positive, it will happen. You must believe that it will happen. I'm a potential driving instructor, I will see if I would like to pursue this, but the amount of knowledge and practice and info hunting that I will do for these driving tests was a bit more than what other people would do. So this is the difference between me and other people. And anyone who eventually becomes a driving instructor, they usually learn a bit more than others. So thanks for watching the video, and good luck with your driving tests and theory tests.